Uh, mm, self-respect, respect, something like that. This has been a big uh, subject. I was the word that came to mind was problem, but I don't think problem is the right word. This problem in the sense of like, because even a math problem, right? Math problem is like something that it's not necessarily bad, or if that makes sense, but it's something that wants to be solved, right? Uh, I would say that this one is more urgent, right? This one does have more of a bad, uh, like, bad feelings associated with it, right? Being disrespected, or feeling disrespected, or just not respecting myself, that sort of thing. Feeling like I'm a piece of crap. Uh, uh, I imagine that a lot of trans people struggle with this, you know, in addition to a lot of non-trans people. All right, why am I shaving my mustache? I just had the urge to do it all of a sudden. Is it because I get anxious in front of the camera and I just feel the need to fidget, or is it because I think you won't respect me if you see me as a woman with a mustache? Uh, I'm thinking about this. This is on my mind today because of things from like just the last 2 days, like feeling disrespected at work. Uh, and wondering how to deal with it, right? Because I'm a little bit wary not to make a mountain out of a molehill. Is that how the saying goes? Make a mountain out of a molehill. Making a problem bigger than it is. Yeah, because when I like 20 years ago, if I walked by, like when I was a waiter at IHOP, if I walked by a table and I heard people start laughing, I just assumed they were laughing at me. So, were they really laughing at me? Another example would be uh, when I worked at Starbucks, a guy came in and ordered his drink, and he looked at me. He said, "You are a very handsome man," and I thought he was trying to insult me, by basically saying that I look like a man, right? I didn't have the wig on at the time. I did have the mascara on, the eyeliner. Oh, sorry, I'm not a makeup professional. Uh, but I thought he's sugar coated his jab. He's given me a jab, but he coated it in the sugar, so I couldn't really be like fuck you. I know what you're doing. Uh, of course, he might have just been giving me a compliment. He might have just been saying, "Hey, I like the way you look." So I'm wary about that, right? Uh, and I'm also wary not to put my own feelings of like self hatred or feelings of inferiority onto someone else's actions, right? uh, you know, I've known people like that before, where you say something to them and they just blow up, you know, and you're like, where did that come from? Apparently, you've been holding these feelings of, I'm just a piece of crap for so many years that somebody looks at you funny and you just feel the need to punch them in the face. Right? uh, but I'm not far from that, right? So some people say I have a chip on my shoulder. That's how they put it. But for me, having a chip on your shoulder is just a sign of feeling insecure, feeling inferior, feeling worthless, not seeing your own worth, that sort of thing. And so the question for me that for a long time was kind of how do you resolve that issue? Not the issue of how other people act, but the issue of how I see myself. Basically, like, where does self-esteem come from, right? Look, if you don't have self-esteem, how do you get it? Uh, and this is one of the I often have troubles just with like the whole thing of going after the signs of success, right? Like being rich, right? Like maybe I would feel better about myself if I were wealthy, right? Maybe I would. But am I doing that because I want other people to see me as valuable? I want is that the main motive there is to be seen as valuable by other people? Because I think people have this unconscious idea that your financial status is a kind of a signal of your internal value as a human being. That if you're poor, it's because as a human being you're worthless. Right? You don't bring anything to the table. You're basically a worthless human being, and that's why you're poor, right? People who are rich because they have value. This is kind of I think people inherently or unconsciously see people that way, right? And sometimes I think that's why I'm not rich. It's not because I don't have value, but it's because I see myself as not having value. And I feel like I have to be poor almost because, you know, I don't deserve to be rich. I don't deserve to be happy. So there are multiple angles here. Uh, that is one of the things that I'm thinking about now. Is like this thing about jobs. I've never really had a job that would have made me rich. If I'd stayed there. With my working for my father, I could have become financially secure. I would say if I'd stayed working for him, probably within a few years of taking money. Because right now I'm living in a bus. I don't pay rent. So if I were making say even $1,000 a week, uh, if I were making that much, I didn't make that much working for him. But if I were, you know, 90% of that I could just put into the stocks, and then maybe in 5 years, I could have, I don't know, some enough money that might think of myself as rich. But now I'm thinking about that. Because I've been working at Dollar Tree, right? Dollar Tree is, one of the stingiest places I've ever worked. Uh, I'm making now an hourly wage that I possibly could have made back in 1994 when I graduated from high school. It's currently 2024, and there's that thing in my head that when I get kind of down in the dumps, it's kind of like, am I am I beating myself up for the fact that I work at Dollar Tree? Is there somewhere in my head, you know, because there's a part there, I have this kind of conflicting thing, right, where there's something inside of me that says you have to love yourself enough to work at a place like this. Like working at a place like this is in a way a kind of act of self-love, right? Or is it? I'm not sure. Uh, what if what I really want is a job that makes me rich? You know, what if what I really want is a job that requires me to use my brain and is not just some cake job of like being a cashier? The thing is, I do like the job. I like being a cashier because I get to meet people from the community. I get to talk to people all day long, right? Yesterday was Mother's Day. The day before that, I worked as a cashier and I had like 300 customers. And I believe I talked to every single one of them. At least just to say, how are you doing? That's all it was. Uh, so I like that. Uh, but, you know, the last few months have been kind of the pits, you know. And a lot of that has to do with like not being able to afford an air conditioner. It's going to be summertime here pretty soon. You know, currently, what is it? Is it April? I don't even know what month it is right now off the top of my head. Uh, but it's going to be getting pretty hot here. I made a video just 3 days ago. It was so hot in here, I was like wiping sweat off my face. And I don't have an air conditioner in the bus. I can get one. I mean, like I have the generator. I bought a generator not too long ago, just so I can power an AC unit in here. But since then, I have not made enough money to buy an AC unit. And I don't have a refrigerator still. I have not been able to put a shower in the bus yet. Things like that. Yeah, you know, I've been doing without that for months. I've been in the bus for 2 years, and I've been doing without a shower in the bus. I've been doing without AC in the bus. I've been doing without a refrigerator. Uh, and honestly, it's not that bad. You know, it's really not. It's certainly not worse than living in a shipping container in Afghanistan for 6 months. You know. When I lived in the shipping container, I didn't have anything really. I had a cot. I did have a laptop, and I think I had like all of the seasons of the Friends DVDs, the TV show Friends. Uh, the Afghan people apparently like to bootleg movies and TV shows and make Blu-ray, not Blu-ray, but burn their own discs and sell them for $1. They had all kinds of movies there. So, but there is that little thing in my brain that says, if you were wealthy, you wouldn't be dealing with this stuff. And another part of that is studying religion for years, right? Like I didn't think my talk would go in this direction. I thought it was going to go in a different direction, but I guess it's all right. So studying religion has kind of gotten me into that kind of mode of thinking that not necessarily that you need to be poor, right? Or that you need to abstain from the lust for money and that sort of thing. But like, you know, like in the Bible, it says, how does it go? Do not worry about what you will eat. Do not worry about what you will wear, what you will drink. Do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow has enough concerns of its own. but seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and then all these things will be added unto you. Right? And so this has kind of been my philosophy for the last, at least since I've been living in the bus, right? That was one of the ideas, was to not worry about rent, to not worry about, to not worry about money, to not worry about having to make money, to get myself in a position where money was just not the main concern. But then there is the question too of, what does it mean to seek the kingdom of heaven? Because the Bible's not the only book that takes that kind of position. I don't really know what position or what motive spiritual masters have when they move out into the wilderness. In other traditions, like if you look in like the Chinese or Indian traditions, when I say Indian, I mean like from India, not Native American. But it was actually kind of similar with them too, I believe. But in those traditions, people who had this spiritual calling would go out and live in the woods or the mountains, caves, and just kind of live off the land. Another example from the Bible is John the Baptist, right? He wore animal skins. He ate honey and locusts, right? He lived out in the wilderness by himself, right? Supposedly. Or he describes himself as a voice crying alone in the wilderness. Or does he ask Jesus that question? Did you come here to find a voice crying alone in the wilderness? But certainly, for most of my life, I have tried to fit in, right? That was one of my it was something that I wanted, something that, like, when I think about like what caused me pain, and for most of my life, it was the feeling that I didn't fit in. Or feeling like I didn't know how to fit in, feeling like I had to be an actor and act in certain ways to get people to like me, and that sort of thing. That that in itself comes across to me as kind of inherently disrespectful to my own self. This sort of thing of like me bending over backwards to try to get other people to look at me and see someone that they want to be around and spend time with. And uh, like I remember when I just talking to people, when I first started like trying to be conversational with people, a lot of times it wasn't because that's what I wanted to do. It's because when people were around me, they complained that I didn't say anything, right? So if it's not obvious, like when I was in high school, I didn't have any friends, but that's because I didn't talk to people. Uh, when I did start talking to people, it was to a large degree me trying to be friends with them and not really just like expressing myself, you know, that sort of thing. Whereas that's more what I do now. Like when I talk to people, like the customers where I work, a lot of times I'll just throw out whatever's on my mind, you know. Uh, but so much of my life was trying to just be normal, just trying to fit in. Uh, and I do feel like that's where a lot of my self hatred comes from, or not necessarily comes from, but perpetuated the self-hatred. I'll put it that way, because I suspect it comes from something much earlier than all that, right? uh, People weren't people weren't disrespectful to me, like in high school, in college. Uh, I got picked on a few times, but not nothing. It wasn't like an everyday thing. It was like maybe once or twice throughout school, anyways. It didn't become like disrespect didn't become a major problem until I joined the army, right? And that was when I think it's not a coincidence that was when I most felt this kind of like I need to fit in because I feel so much not like these other people. So, because it was actually, for whatever reason, maybe it was a sign from the universe or whatever. I don't, maybe why I made this decision, but I had my first homosexual experience right after basic training, Army basic training. I got stationed in Hawaii, and when I first got to Hawaii, I was doing the in-processing, which is just like the paperwork phase of being assigned a new duty station, right? Where you're not actually in the unit where you'll be working. You're in this kind of holdover kind of area because I think the Army doesn't even know what unit you're going to when you get sent to the place. So I had like 2 weeks where I was free to go to Waikiki or Honolulu or whatever. Did I mention that I was stationed in Hawaii? And so, of course, I would go out with other guys who were there in the in-processing thing. But one night in particular, I just wanted to kind of wander off on my own. Partly because I wanted to use cough syrup, and I didn't want them to know that I was using it recreationally, I mean. And it is the sort of thing that keeps me up like all night long. And around 6 o'clock in the morning, I was still awake down in Waikiki, and a local Hawaiian, I think he might have been Filipino, offered me a ride back to the barracks, which if he hadn't offered it to me, I don't know how I would have gotten back. But because my group like I said, I had split myself off from the group, and I don't remember how I got there, but long story short, he wanted to give me a blowjob, and at first I refused, but then after several what do you call it when someone begs? Several beggings, several attempts to beg, several pleas. Please, he made his pleas. Please let me suck your dick. I let him try it. I made him stop almost immediately afterwards, but I felt like I had crossed a threshold. Right? Like I have taken a step out beyond my normal living life story. Right? I have opened and I have turned a new page in the chapter of my life. Just by those few seconds of his mouth on me, right? And I got back to the barracks and told all the guys who I'd gone out with the night before, and plus some. And then I got sent eventually to my unit, and I was just like, everybody here is gonna know. It's gonna spread. And I was just like, I felt like I was sweating like a whore in church. This is how, that saying, to sweat like a whore in church, because you feel like you're the worst sinner there, right? That's the idea. You kind of feel like, God, I'm just like the worst person in the world. The Army is like a church. It does have a kind of religious quality to it, right? And one of the biggest sins, of course, is to be gay, right? And it's not just because the Army can't use gay people or gay people make bad soldiers, right? I'm not sure what the reason is actually why the army had an issue with gays being there. I don't know if it's just because they didn't want, they don't want to have to deal with gay guys hitting on other guys, while they're training or while they're on deployment or, that sort of thing. Maybe that's what it is. But that's what I felt like. I felt like I was just the lowest. And I wanted to fit in so badly. And I don't think I've ever been picked on worse in my life. And people didn't say things that were like terrible. It was just more like, why are you acting so weird? That sort of thing. You're a weirdo. You're like a spy. Those sorts of things. But it was just like every day. But that was when I really started to think about that question of like self-respect, respect. Because even before that, like one of my first ever journal entries that I ever wrote was, when I was like 18 years old. This was way before I joined the army. Was that I hated myself, and for the years after that, at that time and for years later, it I got away with it. You might say that the world didn't punish me for me punishing myself. You might say, uh, once I because once I got out of high school and went to college, once I got away from my family, I think was one of the big parts of it. Was I did start to come out of my shell and I did start talking to people. But I had to be drunk. Right? This is when I started using drugs and alcohol, which in a way is a kind of disrespect of my own self. What made that worse was the idea that I needed these things to be social and to be creative. Because one of the things that I learned was that if I drink a bottle of cough syrup, I can come up with poems or images. Like I'll draw things that just never would have come to me sober. And so you start, after a while, I started to get this idea started like wearing a rut in my brain that I need drugs in order to be creative, which is, you might say, disrespectful to myself. Uh, but I got away with that, because I did make friends who used drugs. Most everybody that I spent time with before I joined the army was a drug user. And we had good times together. There were times when I had bad times, a lot of partly because of this social anxiety and this need to fit in. Like when I dated the woman, right? I dated the woman for 4 years, and uh, it was a painful experience. She wasn't mean to me. She wasn't disrespectful. But that didn't stop me from feeling like a total turd, right? And it just got worse and worse and worse over the 4 years until that's when I decided to join the army because I felt like I need to change my life. Uh, 4 years of that, and it was like I could hardly look at myself in the face. Uh, but there was an element to that of trying to be someone for her, right? Like this, there was just like this kind of like I have to be somebody that I'm not in order for her to love me. And what is more disrespectful than that? So I did love her, you know. I don't think that we belong as a couple, but that's partly because she wasn't open to the idea of me having sex with men. Even back then, I hadn't had sex with a man yet, but I told her that eventually I'm going to try. And she said, "No, not with while you're with me." She said that would be cheating. So, just for that reason, the relationship can't work, you know? Because I'm not going to stop living my life to be with somebody, right? uh, but I do question how much of that is where I'm at now, right? Like if I said that I have an urge to leave Dollar Tree and go get a job as a data analyst, which is one of the things that I'm looking at, uh, how much of that is because I have this like people are looking down on me because I work at Dollar Tree. My family is looking down on me because I work at Dollar Tree. People who meet me at Dollar Tree are looking down on me because I'm a cashier at Dollar Tree. I'm never going to find a wife or a husband working as a cashier at Dollar Tree. You know, uh, how much of that is where that comes from, right? These are things that, for me, I kind of feel like I have to kind of parse out and say, yeah, no, I really do just want to be rich. It's not. It has nothing to do with being accepted by other people. So, who knows? Maybe a way to uh, resolve that is just to become rich and not show it to anybody. You know, not tell anybody. I did it. You know, years ago. I was thinking about meeting women, and I remember thinking, if I were rich, if I were a millionaire, and I wanted to go meet women, what I think that I would do is dress like I was middle class, like might wear like blue jeans and t-shirts or something like that, and go out and meet women, and not tell them what I do for a living, or maybe even make up something. Like I work at some greenhouse. I like plants. Uh, Something like that. I show up to our date in a pickup truck. What would be the reason for that? It's because I want her to like me for me, right? Not for my money. But, you know, I imagine that there are some fat women who probably don't want to lose weight because what they want is someone to love them for them, right? They say, I want someone to love me even when I'm fat. But does that mean they really want to be fat? Maybe what they really want is to be a sexy Playboy model. Maybe they don't really like being fat. They just don't like the idea that, you know, they need to change who they are to be loved by someone else. You know? But is that what I'm doing? Am I just like, I insist on being poor because I want someone to love me even when I'm poor? But maybe I'm not poor. Maybe I have a lot of value. And maybe I'm the kind of person who, if I had lots of money, could do lots of really good things. And the people who meet me think, you should be rich because you have the potential to change the world, and you're not doing it working at Dollar Tree, making $10 an hour. I really didn't expect the talk to go this way. Uh, really, what was on my mind was more the immediate, like how to deal with people when they are disrespectful. Uh, but I do at the same time wonder how much years of disrespecting myself kind of culminates in these instances where people are disrespectful. Because one of the things that I feel like happens is people are more inclined to disrespect people who disrespect themselves, and they're more likely to respect people who respect themselves. Right? So if I were in the practice of respecting myself day after day after day for the last 30 years, maybe I wouldn't be dealing with these little tiffs, you know. You know, I don't think it would end. I don't think that, you know, when you look at somebody like Trump, Trump probably deals with people all the time trying to get their jabs in and say, ah, you're a piece of shit. You know, I'm going to bring you down. That sort of thing. Pick your person. Maybe you don't like Trump. Maybe you like Obama. I'm sure it's the same with Obama, too. I'm sure he deals constantly with people. You know, if he were to if he posts something on Facebook, I'm sure there's going to be 50 people who attack him in the comments. But even face to face, you know, I'm sure he does have the worshipers, the people who, when they see him, they kiss his feet. But I'm sure he also has haters, right? So, but of course, that's not a reason to say, well, okay, I mean, if it's going to happen either way, there's no point in respecting myself. To do all that work of respecting myself. Is it work to respect yourself, or is it play? Is it play or work to respect yourself? Is loving yourself play? Does loving yourself imply like being almost like a child? And just saying, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want. I'm just going to, if my heart says, go put on a dress and run down the street, I'm going to go put on a dress and run down the street. Is that what self-respect is all about? Having the courage to do the things you want to do. I feel pretty. On the subject of self-respect, I have a project that I'm working on, and I don't want to not work on it today. I will have to stop this video at some point, and I think now is a good time. Because I feel like I've run out of things to say, even though I feel like I didn't really, like I said, I don't know. I thought this was going to go in a different direction, more of like a interpersonal thing. Maybe I said what I needed to say. I don't know. I don't know. Goodbye.